Hey there, I'm the MadCatster. Am I glad to see you here? Well, Jeff Wittek finally filed a lawsuit against David Dobrik for the horrific accident that happened 2 years ago in June 2020 when they were all in Utah on a Vlog Squad getaway. Well, Jeff Wittek has finally filed suit, and just in the nick of time, I've downloaded the documents from the court. So we're going to talk about what's going on, what he's looking for, and what the facts are. So let's get into it. So, I am here with Sybil the Enforcer. She's feeling better today. She wasn't feeling so good yesterday, but she did eat her breakfast today, and I was very happy about that. But she says, I've come down here to make sure that those of you who are watching who aren't subscribed are subscribed. So if you aren't subscribed, please subscribe. Sybil would be very happy. And we just went over 12,000 subscribers, so we're continuing to grow. So help us out, please, and like and subscribe. I would appreciate it. Thank you. And Sybil says thank you too. So Jeff Wittek has finally gotten off his butt and filed a lawsuit against David Dobrik for the horrific accident that happened 2 years ago in June 2020 when his face was horribly injured and disfigured from a crazy stunt with an excavator swinging him around by a rope. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with the facts around that and the horrible surgeries that Jeff Wittek has had to go through to restore his face, and he's got, permanent injuries, obviously. And people were wondering, is he going to sue? Is he going to sue? Well, in California, the statute of limitations for personal injury, which is what this would be, a personal injury lawsuit, because he was injured, obviously. And so he's going after David Dobrik for injuring him. And a personal injury lawsuit must be filed within 2 years of the injury. Now, it occurred in June of 2020. They filed the lawsuit on June 21st of 2022. I'm assuming just under the wire. And he's now looking for both damages to cover his actual damages. And we've talked about actual damages before. So like his medical bills, loss of income, any number of other factors that will be determined by a jury in the evidence, or I'm assuming it's going to be a jury trial. A jury in the evidence, they'll decide what his actual damages are, and that'll be borne out. They're also asking for what's known as exemplary damages, and that's to make an example the defendant. And in this case, they're seeking $10 million in exemplary damages. Now, I'm going to show you the complaint in just a second, but I've seen it reported that by some people that is a $10 million lawsuit. Well, yes, the exemplary damages, they're asking $10 million, but it's much more than that because they're also asking for his actual damages, and we don't really know what that figure is yet. They don't have to provide that now, but they will have to provide evidence that demonstrates, what the actual bills and what their experts say his lost income potentially was, and put together that during the trial. So he'll get both, hopefully if it goes his way, he'll get both actual damages and he'll get hopefully the $10 million in exemplary damages, which is what he wants. Now, when this all happened, at first it looked like Jeff Wittek had forgiven David Dobrik and they sort of were on friendly terms, or it seemed like they were on friendly terms. And people were wondering, why isn't he suing him? Because David Dobrik, from what I understand, was actually operating this machine, which clearly he had never operated before. And from what I understand, he didn't have any kind of training. So he was negligent by doing this, and that's what they're asserting here. So that's why he's suing David Dobrik. He's also suing the company that owned the piece of equipment because, of course, they're alleging that that company was negligent by not showing David Dobrik how to use the equipment properly. And, properly, I mean, you're not supposed to use this equipment, people, to swing human beings around. But the fact that they allowed him to take this equipment and do this with it and apparently didn't give him any kind of training on how to use the equipment, they're also going after that company. Here's the statute of limitations. I wanted to show you this. So this is California statute of limitations, and I'm not going to go over all of them. I'm just going to talk about the personal injury one. And you can see here that, and it explains, the statute of limitations is the deadline for filing a lawsuit. Most lawsuits must be filed within a certain amount of time. In general, once the statute of limitations on a case runs out, the legal claim is not valid any longer. Now, there are some exceptions to that. So, in other words, the 2 years could run out, and then the doctors could go, oh, we missed that there's a damage to your ear that we didn't realize happened during that same accident. And because it's just then being discovered, then he would get a year from then to file additional claims for undiscovered injuries that later were discovered. But anyways, that's not relevant in this case. So you can see here, it says personal injury. It's 2 years from the injury. If the injury was, see here it says, if the injury is not discovered right away, then it's 1 year from the date the injury was discovered. So clearly they've just made it under the wire. I'm assuming that the accident happened at the end of June, since this was filed on the 21st. So now let's talk about what they're looking for. Okay, so here you can see, I'm going to put up, this is the civil case cover sheet that basically it's sort of like a brief summary of what this case is about. And you can see it's like a checklist where they say personal injury case. So they're putting it under auto tort. I'm assuming it's all types of vehicles. It's not just autos. And obviously this is a vehicle because it moves. So it's a vehicle. They're seeking intentional bodily injury. They're seeking intentional infliction of emotional distress. And what that means is they're saying that the conduct of David Dobrik was intentional and it inflicted emotional distress on Jeff Wittek, which I can clearly see why that would be, given the extent of the trauma that he suffered and the number of surgeries he's gone through. I'm sure that that's not going to be too difficult to prove, because a lot of times the emotional distress damages are sometimes hard to prove. But in this case, I think it's so extreme. In a lot of states, that's like the bar that you have to surpass. It's like, it's got to be outrageous and beyond the pale in order to be emotional distress. And so I think that this is clearly going to fit that, and I don't think they're going to have a problem proving that. They're also looking for other personal injury, which it's not specified here. Okay, so now I'm going to put up, you can see here is the actual complaint. Now, this is unlike the complaints that I've showed you before where they're typed out and there's like paragraphs of information, because in this case, California provides a pre-formatted injury complaint. And so there's different things that you need to check off, and then there's a place where you describe the injury and what the circumstances were. And so you can see here, it's Wittek versus Dobrik et al. And they're seeking an unlimited amount of damages, which just in this case, it just means that it's over $25,000. So they're seeking damages over $25,000. Clearly, it's in the millions. You can see this page here. It's the first cause of action, general negligence. And this is, I've highlighted just a few places. I'm not going to read the entire thing. So let's just take a look. So, oh yes. Okay. So June 25th, it says here, June 25th, 2020. So yes, they just made it 4 days under the wire. So if he had hesitated any longer, his chance to sue David Dobrik would have passed. So it was on June 25th, 2020 in Provo, Utah. And it says that David Dobrik, an individual on behalf of David Dobrik LLC, which must be his company that he has all his YouTube stuff under, leased, rented, or appropriated an excavator from Dirt Gear Company LLC, who he's also named as one of the defendants, provided no training or instruction on how to use the excavator to Dobrik or how not to use the excavator, including the safety features of the excavator. The plan was to have David Dobrik individually and on behalf of David Dobrik LLC drive said excavator and have people swing from it with various accessories, including wakeboards, etc. However, Dobrik and others not the plaintiff began soliciting people to get on the excavator solely using a rope and swinging around. Other individuals tried this, noting that Dobrik was doing so unsafely and in fact warned Dobrik of the same. So he's saying that people had said, hey, David, this is not a good idea. This is dangerous, basically. And yet David Dobrik went forward with it. So, and I know that David Dobrik is going to argue probably that Jeff Wittek assumed the risk of going on this rope and allowing himself to be swung around, but we're not going to talk about that now. We'll wait and see when an answer is filed what the allegations and the defenses are that David Dobrik's team is going to make. And I'm guessing that's going to be one of the things they're going to assert, is that Jeff Wittek knew what he was doing and assumed the risk when he participated in this. So, I don't know that that's going to be a winning argument for them, but anyway, so goes down in a little further. It says Dobrik, having not been trained or advised by Dirt Gear Company LLC on how to use the excavator or how to slow it down, intentionally and noticeably slowed the excavator down too quickly, which caused plaintiff's momentum to slow down, and plaintiff struck the excavator due to the negligence of Dobrik individually on behalf of his company, blah, 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 causing myriad injuries to the plaintiff. So he's basically saying David Dobrik was negligent. He didn't know that what the hell he was doing. He caused this traumatic injury to Jeff Wittek, and that's the basis for their claim. And here you can see they're asking for judgment for costs of the suit for such relief as is fair, just, and equitable, and for punitive damages, compensatory damages, and the amount of the damages is according to proof. In other words, according to what evidence they're going to present at the trial will determine what the amount of the damages are going to be for those categories. And so on top of those damages, they're also seeking $10 billion in exemplary damages. And so the exemplary damages are to make an example of David Dobrik for being so stupid in doing this, allegedly. And they want $10 million in damages, basically to send a signal to people is don't do stupid things if you needed somebody to tell you that. So that's what they're asking for in the lawsuit. Now, I had started to tell you, like, you know, it appeared at first after this had all happened that they, like, mended fences and that David Dobrik had expressed a great deal of concern for what had happened and had expressed his remorse, and it looked like Jeff Wittek had forgiven him. But then last year, things sort of percolated up and you could see the deterioration in their relationship. And then just earlier this year, I'm going to show you this tweet from Jeff Wittek. There was a roast coming up that he was supposed to participate in, that David Dobrik was going to be at. And so it was a roast of Bryce Hall, and this was back in February of this year. And here's the tweet from Jeff Wittek, and this is what he had to say. He says, "I'm no longer a part of the roast of Bryce Hall. My entire set will be cut due to censorship." He was mad, just as an aside. He was mad because he wanted to do like a comedy routine, and he was alleging that the organizers, they were like scaling down the jokes and the piece that he was going to say, and he got pissed off about that. And I had heard that that wasn't actually the case, but you know, that's not what we're here to talk about. So that's what he's talking about. So when he says censorship, but it says, in David Dobrik being involved, this is where he basically lays it on the line. "I refuse to be a part of anything that scumbag," and I quote, "is involved in from here on out." So clearly they had reached the end of their relationship. And that's probably why Jeff Wittek finally consulted with some attorneys and said, look, I'm going to sue him. So, you know, good for him, because I think, you know, even if David Dobrik's team argues that he assumed some of the risk, I think you can argue that to a point, but you can't say that, well, the fact that he operated the machinery negligently, you don't participate and assume the risk that someone's going to stop the machine suddenly and smash your face into this piece of heavy equipment. So I would say that, you know, the assumption of the risk argument is probably not going to fly. But I'm positive they're going to make it, and we'll see when the answer comes. I'll tell you about it. I'm guarantee you that's going to be one of the things they're going to say. But I think his chances are very good. I think that he will win. And I think what's going to happen, though, is probably they're going to end up settling. I don't think David Dobrik's going to want this to go to trial, and I'm sure his attorneys will advise him, let's try to settle this. And my guess is that's what you're going to see. I know it'll go on for a little while. They'll do, like, you know, discovery, and they'll file motions, and some other stuff will happen. And then they'll reach the point where they've exchanged enough documents and answered enough questions that David Dobrik's team will say, look, we need to try to settle this. And they'll conference about what would be a reasonable settlement. And it may not be all of what he's asking for in the complaint, but it's probably going to be a big number. And if they do it, and I'm guessing that's probably what's going to end up happening. In most cases like this, they do end up settling, especially if the facts are pretty clear. I think they're pretty clear in this case, and David Dobrik, I'm sure, does not want to go through a Johnny Depp-style trial. So that's my guess. My guess is they'll try to settle it. I think that Jeff Wittek's case is very good. Just judging from the facts that I know, it's clear to me that it was negligence. And the injury he suffered was so catastrophic that certainly he has a case for intentional infliction of emotional distress. So we'll wait and see what happens. I'll be interested, and I will keep you up to date. As soon as that answer gets filed, we'll talk about it, and I'll tell you what they're alleging as defenses to these claims by Jeff Wittek and what David Dobrik ends up putting forward as his response. So thank you for joining me. This was sort of impromptu because this just sort of hit the media, and I wanted to talk about it while it's still being discussed so that you guys could have a clear understanding of like what they're asking for, what the court documents actually say, instead of just what the media is reporting. So thanks for joining me. Please like and subscribe. I really appreciate you being here. Here are the thank yous. Thank you to the Amazon Angels. Thank you to the Patreon patrons. Thank you to the channel members. And thank you to the people who have bought me a coffee. You're all great. Thank you for getting us over 12,000. Let's keep growing. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and like. It takes just a second and it doesn't cost you anything. I appreciate you being here. You guys take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.
Pretty please. Subscribe, like, and hit the bell. I get a treat for every new sub. Thank you.